This may be just the night for this subject. My next guest is the author of a controversial new book called Sexual Suicide. And he's been the editor of the Ripon Forum, which is a magazine put out by liberal Republicans. He's been on the faculty of the Kennedy Institute at Harvard. An excerpt from Sexual Suicide was published as the cover feature in Harper's a few months ago. Harper's usually gets 5 or 6 letters in response to articles. This time they got 104, and 93 of them were unfavorable, and 11 were favorable. Or so. But that's a silly, statistics mean nothing. I don't know which side of that I'm on. Perhaps I will find out. Will you welcome Mr. George Gilder, then? Gilder. You know everybody. What, Mr. Gilder, upset the, there's hissing already and we haven't heard a word.
Right.
What point about your book that was excerpted got the angry male angry?
The angry male angry. It seems to me they thought that women should get equal pay for equal work. I think there was.
Where would they get an idea like that?
And they didn't perceive that I, in fact, believe in the ideal of equal pay for equal work, but I don't believe in a massive government program abandoning the cause of civil rights for blacks designed to intrude in the market, in the job market, pervasively in order to advance the position of women. Because I think what this fails to recognize is that women are less aggressive than men are. And this is because of...
Apparently you're right, they are more aggressive. What? I don't... Wait a minute, what? Watch me handle this. Yeah. Wait a minute. What? Do you have a spokesman?
Yes, I do.
Well, it's a little hard to hear when you're yelling.
Madam President, I just would like to give this to Mr. Gilder.
So can you tell me what it is?
Yeah, there's a statement that goes along with it I'd like to read.
Why is it ticking? All right, but listen, this is the last time I ever accept anything from the audience. You want me to read it? No, I'll read it. Do you trust me? Men can read. This is a bad precedent. I hate myself for setting it. Go ahead. Yeah, come on. Read it.
All right.
Read fast.
All right.
I don't mean to be intolerant. Okay.
We are presenting author George Gilder with an historic reminder. He has nothing new to say. His thesis is as old as the Bible. But sexism kills, and the ashes in this urn are the women who have been murdered at the altar of male supremacy. Just a minute.
Wait a minute. Could I ask the audience to shut up? Go ahead.
The flesh of women burned by thousands in the Middle Ages, the so-called witches who perished at the stake in our own New England, and the untold numbers who died beneath the knife of quack doctors at the hands of doctors performing illegal abortions. As recent as 2 weeks ago, a young lesbian woman was murdered, burned to death by 3 men in the Boston suburb of Roxbury. As lesbian feminists, we're here tonight to say that male supremacy instead must perish. As lesbian feminists, we assert the right of every woman to be a self-defined individual. We declare the necessity for all women to discover and use the potentials and the resources which exist in themselves and each other.
Excuse me, we're coming to a break. Let me finish it for you. We assert the right of every woman to express herself with her body, intellect, and emotions as the complete human being that society has discouraged her from being. We assert the right of every woman to express her sexuality in any way she chooses as an affirmation of her own individuality. We further declare our intention to confront and disarm attitudes and institutions that attempt to limit these rights. Okay, thank you. Allow us now to proceed with the show in an orderly fashion. Do you mind? Okay. We'll be right back after this message. I hope we don't have a nasty situation here now. I may have to make a ground rule or two. I did let you read your statement. We're not going to do the rest of the show with people shouting from the audience, and if you think you're going to get tossed out of here. But I invite you to stay and listen to this discussion if you like. Okay? Now, and I hope you will stay. George Gilder, I guess maybe I ought to ask you what you have done to set this off. I should have opened by asking you where you were born, I suppose, earlier, and we could. But you do say things that are likely to provoke that kind of thing. I didn't expect it tonight, but we got it.
One point I think I should make clear is I oppose male chauvinism, and I think it's the product of a society which fails to support the masculine roles, because it's men who are insecure, it's men who are unsure of themselves in their role in the society, who are reduced to the lowest terms of masculinity, that is, muscle and phallus. And it's these women who, it's these men who exploit women. Men who have a secure role, who are connected to families, are much more apt to be committed to the future, to the long-term purposes of the society, and to the long-term purposes of female sexuality. One of the problems of men is they have a very short-term, impulsive kind of sexual experience. There's nothing in their body that leads them beyond copulation and command. In order for males to be civilized, in a sense, they have to subordinate their short-term sexuality, this short-term sexual impulse, which leads only to copulation, to the long-term dimensions of female sexuality that lead to the bearing and nurturing of children. And it's through the submission, the subordination of the male sexual impulse to the more elaborate dimensions of female sexuality that men acquire their connections to children, and through their connections to children, their connection with the very future of the race and the future of the community. And what's happening in our society today is that because of technology and bureaucracy, most male roles aren't very affirmative. They don't give the man the sense of masculinity and command that he needs in order to make long-term commitments to women.
Well,
as a result, he has this fantasy culture he creates, and it dominates our culture. You watch the average TV program, for example, gives an image of single men, predatory, violent, loving them and leaving them. And you go to the average newsstand, and 90% of the magazines are celebrating a mode of sexuality that is completely inconsistent with the maintenance of families, which are indispensable to civilized society. So you have a society that really is hostile to female sexuality. And this, of course, produces feminism. Now, this is an ill-conceived movement, because what it does is further weaken the position of men. And I think one of the, makes them less sure of their masculinity, less able to commit themselves to families, and thus more predatory, more chauvinistic. And
surely the main movers in what is called the women's movement, I think now, rather than women's liberation, is for the freedom of the male as well as the female. They're not working towards, apart from on very basic level, towards natural justice, which is equal pay for equal work, which seems like a very simple and right thing to work for. They're also working, if you study the literature, not for the destruction of men, it's for their rehabilitation.
That's what they say. Rehabilitation. They want to humanize men. But the fact is that men need distinctive roles that are distinctively masculine before they can fulfill these patterns of compassion and nurturance which the feminists purport to value.
And in order to... Can I say something?
Yeah, sure.
I was going to pick on you some, but now that you've been so assaulted, I may not. But you have a kind of sociology lingo that puts me off a bit. But I know what you're saying, and you do say an interesting thing, that women are more comfortable in their sex, you think, than men are. It isn't so much of women trying to be women as there isn't so much of that as there are men who have to prove that they're men.
That's right.
John Wayne complex. I'm not sure I understand why that's true, or even that it is true. I mean,
well, I
wouldn't
think
the opposite of the John Wayne complex be the world of the Helen Gurley Brown, the lady who makes herself a fluffy little cupcake for the man?
Well, I think that movement also reflects the dominance of a mode of sexuality that's reduced to male terms. That is, males have one sex act, that's copulation. A woman has a whole elaborate series of sex acts that are more important than the men's.
Well, you're obviously going to have to define sex acts before someone jumps up and says
well,
you're
certainly
full of...
maternity is the paramount sexual act.
Excuse me, but...
It's certainly most important. There's nothing more important psychologically
Excuse him.
socially.
Excuse me, but all these awful generalizations don't get any of us anywhere, do they really? Because I mean to say, some women like you, and you like some women, and some women you trust, and some women you can make love with well, and some women you know it's totally impossible with, drunk or sober, Peter. And, I mean, and if this is maybe sounding terribly rude, but you know, I read your book last night, probably the only one here who has, actually.
The hell you are.
You read it? Yeah. Well, I quite agree with quite a lot of general observations you make, but I don't think you should write that kind of book unless you learn also, this is going to sound terribly rude, and I don't mean to be anything but very gentle, to learn how to write a sentence. I can't understand 3/4 of your jargon.
Oh, baloney.
Well, let me pick up one page, right? You asked me for an example. This is what I really feel passionate about. Let me turn to anywhere. Page 117. The only surprising fact about our ghetto tragedy is the way we doggedly refuse to understand it, dash, and the way we endlessly perpetuate it. It should be clear to any sentient observer. Now, most people, including me, who is a writer, have to think, sentient? Jesus Christ, I'd better pick that up and find it. It should be clear to any... Listen to this, Peter. You couldn't write it. It should be clear to any sentient observer with a smattering of anthropological and psychological insight, I don't know how we get that the worst parts of the ghetto present a rather typical pattern of female dominance, comma, with women in charge of the family and male gangs, presumably us, away on the hunt. Now, what have I said? What have I said? That's what makes me annoyed. I don't understand the book.
Well, you're quarreling.
No, to be fair, that sounds very clear, really.
Yes, really?
Oh, you're joking. I mean, I thought you were... I mean...
All right, read a page.
Well, you have to read the chapter in which it occurs. If you go through the book picking out sentences out of context,
I know it's monstrous to attack you like this, but I mean, say like Bertrand Russell, the English philosopher who is now dead. You have, if you're a doctor and you're going to write about women and all these things which really hurt us all, you do have to write so that we can understand it, because I believe that's all disguised.
Lots of people understand that book.
You're out. We'll be back after this message.